One of my pieces of advice that has served my clients well over the years is to establish a reputation locally and then expand into new markets because you know the people there. But what happens when you move into a totally new place? How do you adjust? In this episode of The Art Biz, I talk with Joan Chamberlain, and I've really enjoyed watching how Joan has put herself out there in her new community of Eugene, Oregon, volunteering for things, doing live painting, really getting involved and happier as a result. Here's my conversation with Joan Chamberlain. Hi, Joan. Welcome to the Art Biz.
Thank you, Alyson. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. You are one of the lucky people who was at or were at my very, very first live workshop. It was in 2003. You drove up to Oklahoma City from Dallas. It was called CPR for Artists. I looked it up. Thank you so much for staying in this orbit for so many years. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you. I was impressed at the time. And I'm one of those people, maybe like many of your listeners, who tries everything that comes down the pike, at least dip my toe in with a free course or whatever. But your dedication, your organization, it impressed me so much. Because I think that's something that I'm not great at. And your persistence, you've just always so regular with your email newsletters. And so, yeah, I was impressed.
Well, I appreciate that because we always look back to those first things that we did and just cringe and go, oh my God, like, first of all, how did I fire hose people with all that information in one day? And I've learned so much since then. Of course, that was before social media, before I was explaining to people what a blog was, all that stuff. So thank you for being there.
Another thing, Alyson, was your attention to detail. I remember I could tell that you cared about the lunches, your follow-up, thank you notes, your handwritten note afterwards. Yeah, you really walked the walk.
Oh,
So
thank you. As I recall, my parents brought in the lunch.
they did. I remember.
I ordered it because they lived there and I ordered it, but they brought them in because we were doing everything on the cheap in those days. So that's so funny. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So your art business has taken a lot of twists and turns since then. You were a dentist. You were a practicing dentist till 2016?
Correct. Yeah, for 35 years.
For 35 years. And at the time that we met, you were doing these beautifully detailed botanicals. And the one I remember most is that you introduced me to the word Phalaenopsis, the orchid that I had that I didn't know what it was called.
That's right. And that was a line of work that I had licensed. And so I learned about the art of licensing at that time, which has changed a lot since then. What year did you say? 2003 it was?
2003 was the first workshop, yeah. And we did some consulting after that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, it's interesting because when I went off on that, throughout my dental career, I did freelance illustration and I did murals and a lot of commissions and things like that. So I always stayed in some form of the art world. And the licensing, though, I had sent out a portfolio that was back when you sent slides and to like 20 companies, licensing companies. And I got five immediate interests in pursuing that. So I knew I was onto something with that. And then I don't know, I'm one of those people with too many ideas and I'm easily bored and want to move on to the next challenge. And licensing started to change. I had an agent in San Francisco, Studio Voltaire, and really enjoyed it. Did Surtex in New York City a few times and got another idea, I guess, and went off on, like many artists, another path.
What did happen next? What was the next path?
I designed a product called Recipe Nest. I patented it. I was in Dallas. This was 2007. It was a way to store all assorted shapes and sizes of recipes. And it was solving my own problem, is what it was. And it did very well. And I had a manufacturer in the States, and I needed to produce more and faster. And so I got a sourcing agent for China. And that's a whole different ballgame. And I sold it on QVC. I thought that was going to be the thing. And I was basically building it up to sell it. And my US manufacturer had to close their doors because the bulk of their work was vinyl checkbook covers.
Oh,
Well, no one, yeah, everyone stopped using checks. So when they closed, I sold what I had and decided to just let that go. I enjoy developing products and things that I can design the packaging for, whatever. But so it was a really good experience, somewhat related to art, I guess.
But that was in 2007. But we're still missing some time between now and then.
That was 7 years to 2014.
Okay.
And it was, that and dentistry took up all my time. And then in 2014, I went back to freelance illustration, doing a lot of culinary illustration. That's something I love. I love to cook. I love food. And so culinary illustration was fun. And that kind of started edging into what I'm doing now, which is painting still life that often features wine and food and cocktails and things like that. So that brings us up to date.
When and why did you decide to move to Oregon?
2022, the summer of 2022, two main reasons. One was I had been in Dallas for 41 years. And when you have a dental practice, it's hard to move that, right? But I had always wanted to get over to the West Coast. And in 2022, I met my husband in 2012, and we're big gardeners. We love to garden. He is a climate activist. And so we started thinking about where can we garden a little easier, because as Texas, the summers were becoming increasingly longer, triple-digit summers. So gardening was becoming a little less fun for us. And we started thinking about somewhere where we thought there would be water and a little bit easier time gardening. And then the biggest spark really was when the Supreme Court overturned Roe. And I was in Texas, and I thought, I can't live here anymore. In fact, I told my husband, we're out of here. So I said it a little bit more colorful language, but
I think we all did.
yeah. So we had been part of a grassroots organization, a democratic organization there. And I think we were exhausted. As time, we're not spring chickens. We wanted to go enjoy our retirement a little bit more. And so we went online and took one of those quizzes where you input like where you could move that has all the things you want, like access to the arts, university life, that kind of thing. So Eugene came up for both of us, Eugene, Oregon.
Wow.
And we had never been to Eugene. We had been to Oregon several times and loved it, but we had never been to the city before. So we started looking at homes via video tours with the realtor. And we found a house that we were interested in. And so we moved in September of 2022.
Please tell me that you visited before you bought the house and moved there.
One time.
One time.
And when we drove, we had set up this arrangement with the realtor to meet her. Actually, the very first time that we were going to come, we were in Dallas Love Field, and there was a shooter in the airport. I don't know if anyone heard that, but several people saw us interviewed by the news as we left the airport, because everyone had to evacuate the airport. And so we tried it again the following week and were able to make it. But as we drove down the street, there were deer in the yards. And I thought, okay, I'm sold.
Has your work changed since you moved to Oregon?
It has. I think I had become very defeated and unenthused about my fine art practice. Dallas is, you probably know the Dallas art market better than I ever did. It's maybe a little slicker. I mean, there's so much more money in Dallas than there is in Eugene. It's night and day. And I didn't really fully appreciate that until we got here. But yeah, I've gotten into my fine art practice and I'm finding so much more enjoyment from it. I think because I'm happier, for one thing,
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by nature. And I didn't realize how much that mattered. There was in fact, it's in a little booklet I have of some of the things from your very first workshop, those little set goals or all these little kind of notes you had. But it was a quote by a writer, and I'm going to read it. The only Zen you find on the tops of mountains is the Zen you bring up there. And basically saying that you can move, but you still got you. And if you're not happy, then no matter where you go, you've got to learn how to be happy. And I think I applied that in the wrong way, in a sense, because now that I've moved and realized how much happier I am in a place that feels like I'm surrounded by the things that I love, I realize that moving maybe if this is the top of the mountain, I did need to find my Zen here.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a little contorted, but yeah, my work is, I think, happier, to be honest. It's maybe.
Yeah, I can relate to that because for anyone that knows my story, I moved from a place of unhappiness to a place where I wanted to be in the Denver metro area. And I think wherever you go, there you are. And we want to be happy where we are. But there's just some things some pieces that are missing in some places for us. And I think that's okay. Luckily, we can move. Luckily, for some of us, it's a privilege to move. Yeah.
True. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Another thing that was, I guess, an instrumental thing that I read, the Stephen Pressfield book, I think I had mentioned to you, Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be. The first time I read it, I was in Dallas, and it's kind of like if you want to act, move to LA or New York. And if you want to sing country music, go to Nashville or whatever. And I realized, actually, I wish I could say that I planned it this way, but I didn't. I landed in Eugene in the Willamette Valley, which is the heart of wine country in Oregon. And I didn't know that when I moved here. It's worked out great, but there was a Time article that calls it the new Napa because it's like back in the 80s, almost like what Napa was in the 80s. So there's a lot of room for growth. And it's just coincidental that I was painting wine-themed paintings at the time and found myself here.
So you were already doing that before you got to Eugene.
I was. Yeah, I was exploring. I think my painting's more about exploring shadows and reflections and this visual enjoyment of color. And I think actually since I moved here, the enjoyment of color is something that's coming out more in my paintings. And some of it is feedback I've gotten. I've been able to get more feedback because the thing that I enjoy the most for me is doing art festivals, things where I can meet customers directly. And I'm able to do it here. But in Texas, the last 2 outdoor shows that I was doing had to be taken down almost as soon as they went up because of storms.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a beating. I felt like I was on a ship trying to keep it from capsizing with the winds So I've actually been able to do outdoor shows here. And I enjoy so much meeting people directly and getting their feedback and hearing what they think of the art, because I learn a little bit more each time about my own art.
Definitely. So building on that, How have you established yourself as an artist in Oregon? Doing the outdoor shows? What else have you been doing?
Before I ever moved, I actually entered a show. I looked on the Lane County Arts.org or whatever. I found a show, a juried show at a very nice gallery here that I had never visited. And the theme was food is ... And so I entered a drawing I had done of chef's hands. That had been a passion project of mine in Dallas.
I remember that
Right.
series.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I loved it. I didn't know what to do with it, but I just loved doing it.
Describe
But
it. Before you move on, describe it to people just briefly.
I would approach chefs, especially as I think many people know, a lot of chefs have a lot of tattoos on their arms, and I was fascinated. I could watch a chef cook all day because it's just like this beautiful choreography, and they're not even thinking about it. It's so effortless. So everyone I asked let me come in and take pictures, and then I would create drawings from it. Or I did a couple large murals based on chef's hands for restaurants. And where was I going? Oh, so I had one of a chef who was slicing a tomato, and it got into the show here in Eugene before I ever lived here. But the reception was for a time right after we had moved here. And so it was a welcome to me. Like, yeah, come on in. The arts community embraces you, and we're eager to see your work. So that started it off. But I think one of the most instrumental things I did was I started volunteering at one of the big art centers here. It's Maud Kearns Art Center, and it's a nonprofit. They are just this wonderful group of people. They're very well connected. They've been here for a long time. They know everybody. And it's just been I still love going. I go about once a week to volunteer. And I've met so many more people in the arts community here. I've learned about shows through them, about a wonderful frame shop, all those kinds of things that you need as an artist. And so that I think was one of the most instrumental things. And then I started something I didn't do in Texas. I started telling everyone I'm an artist. And lo and behold, a lot of those neighbors were people who bought from me. So I didn't do that in Dallas somehow. I don't know. It's a very happy, encouraging arts community here.
Well, also, you had established an identity as a dentist in Dallas first before anything else. And it's just easier, I think, to change your identity when you move. Although you've already built some of that online and through your work and so forth, you're just
True.
starting over.
It's true.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, they don't know you as anything else, right? So reinventing yourself.
Isn't that lovely to be able to do that at our age? To be able to just step into a new role.
It really is. I have not enough lifetimes to do all of the different art things I want to do, right? That's the dilemma for a lot of us, I guess.
For sure.
So I try to focus myself, just do this thing.
When you moved, what was harder for you in a new community?
The hardest thing was adapting to the culture and the vibe of Eugene. It couldn't be more different than Dallas, Texas. And there are things about Dallas I like. I mean, the restaurant culture there is fabulous. I always tell people if you need a kidney transplant, Dallas is a fabulous place. I mean, the healthcare, shopping and food but the Eugene culture, they're very They are way more laid back. It's slower. There's nothing slick about it.
See,
And
you said slick more than once. So say what you mean by slick.
I don't want to be negative about it really, but it's a status driven.
I can,
And when
yes,
you're,
I can see that.
yeah, when you're in a place where there's a lot of money, I think that can dictate a lot of how life is lived and how things are done. And what is impressive here, I don't know. It wouldn't be for everybody. I'm one of the few women who wear makeup in my neighborhood. So, but everyone is just so just laid back about
Yeah.
it. It's very individual. There isn't a lot of, I feel there isn't a lot of comparing.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, and so I've learned to calm down a little bit. I'm a executive in some ways, the way I want to execute things and get things done and hurry, hurry, hurry. I still need to let some of that go away. So that's been, I think, the most challenging thing being here.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Before we get into some more details, what are your current income streams, however you break that down?
The vast majority, probably 90%, my husband and I both have retirement income. We both had careers. So art income, which I'm still trying to build it and want to build it. But right now it's more what I call lifestyle money, travel money, home renovations. The more art I sell, the better the renovation gets or the fancier the trip gets. So that's what I have, that freedom. I think that is a luxury, but I'm 69, my husband's 76. And so I've got to be doing something. I love to work. I love to create art, but I am glad and fortunate that I don't have to rely on it.
Right.
But I still get a lot of joy out of selling art.
Sure.
I want to sell art because it directly impacts what I can do.
Sure. Well, from your art income, is the majority of it from the sales of originals?
Yes. Well, I don't know so I have two types of art. I call one fine art, one fun art. The fun art is my Women in Wine series. And right now, those are prints, although I'm doing the large paintings, and I sold the first large painting from that series. And those prints, that series has been very successful. But I mean, as far as amount, the paintings obviously pull in a lot more money than the prints. So I'm enjoying doing both of those. I don't know that I could give any one of those up.
Do you have prints from your fine art also?
I don't right now.
Okay.
No, I'm still learning what people are attracted to about my fine art. And it's taking a few little different directions now that I've gotten more feedback from people from shows. And I'm exploring more glass and the colored bottles and that kind of thing. So I'm still learning, and I don't want to really do prints until I know what's popular, what people are wanting.
Right. You have to be able to sell it multiple times in order to do well with prints. So you've been doing this audience research about your work. You said you were looking to see what people were responding to, which a lot of artists don't understand or don't work that way. So what are you looking for in those situations?
When I had people walk into my booth recently and they would say, "Oh, I love your work," or something like that, I'd say, tell me what you like about it. And I got a couple different things that I wouldn't have used that I can't see in my own work maybe. But I got peaceful, dreamy. Those were from young women. And I thought I would never describe my work that way, but I can see it when they say it. One gentleman walked in and said, "Oh, I see Escher." And I'm like, "Okay." But there were a few pieces where maybe there was this architectural, a shadow or whatever. So what I just asked them if they express an interest, and it helps me see what other people are seeing, and it also helps me like the peaceful comment. I thought, "Okay, I can play off of that." Yeah, I can see it, and I can maybe enhance it a little bit.
Mm.
So, I guess is that answering your question?
Yeah, I just wonder because a lot of times I encourage artists to talk to people and see if someone says, I like your work, to explore that further. What is it that you like about it? And it's really hard for most people to articulate that because they just don't have the language around art to articulate it. But then what do you do with it? Do you change your marketing language? Do you change the art? Yeah, that's just what I was curious about.
Oh, that's interesting, the marketing language. I hadn't even thought of that, Allison. That's exactly what I need to do.
Well, I don't know, maybe the titles change or you can talk to people differently depending on what their responses are. I never encourage artists to change their art based on a couple pieces of feedback, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's not changing my art, but maybe it's
Yeah.
enhancing it and frankly, maybe just the way I feel about it, which I think is important because if you've gotta be enthused. I do. I have to be enthused, and I can paint every day.
Yeah.
That's not a problem, but I like to feel like I'm excited about it.
Well, and it's easier to get excited about it when someone else is excited about
True.
it. So
Yeah,
there you go. That did it.
that's absolutely true.
What kind of shows are you doing?
So I recently did your standard outdoor art festival called Art in the Vineyard. It's a big show that is well known in Eugene. It had been around, excuse me, I think for like 30 plus years. And then COVID came along and then they stopped doing it. And then in and it's through the Maud Kearns Art Center, the art center that I volunteer with. They're the ones who sponsor that basically or put it on. And that show this year was the first outdoor festival that I did. And it was over 100 degrees every day. It was 3 days. This is why I moved from Texas. It was so
Yes.
funny. It's like, "Oh, great." Anyway, I actually recorded in my booth 100.8 degrees one day. So
Ouch.
and it was still a successful show for
Yeah.
me, so I was thrilled because I thought, "Well, next year, if we don't have 100 degrees, who knows?" That I had heard that
Yeah.
this was really shoulder to shoulder, tons of people, and given the weather, it still was a good turnout, so
But
that
you've been doing so that was an outdoor festival, but you've been doing smaller shows too, right?
Yeah, the north of about 2 hours north of us is a place called Dundee, and Dundee is in the heart of the wine country here. It's That's all it exists for, really, is wine tasting rooms, vineyards, wine it's a little strip, along the road where there's just tons of tasting rooms, wineries, and it's in the center of just gorgeous country with vineyards. So I started doing what was called Third Thursdays, where they pair artists with different tasting rooms or wineries. And that was mostly for exposure. I've sold some prints through those shows. They're one Thursday a month for 3 hours. So it's short-lived. It's not like a full-on show. But I've made a lot of contacts through, like, the exhibit. I have a one-person exhibit up right now at the Dundee Hotel, which is a lovely little boutique hotel, and I got that basically through the connections I made doing Third Thursdays. So it's worth it. It's worth the drive, and it's fun. It's get out of town and spend the night at this lovely little
Mhm.
hotel, and that type of show. And then I'm doing I submitted a piece to the mayor's art show last year, and I got a piece in, and there's an art committee at a condominium complex here who features artists every, I think, 2 or 3 months. They turn over artists. So I have an exhibit. That exhibit is coming up at the end of this month. And I was told by the director at the Maud Kearns Art Center, that is a group of people who buy art. I mean, they love original art. So entering shows, juried shows, doing outdoor festivals, and doing the first Fridays or the third Thursdays or whatever. Those are the ways that I've been getting my art out in front of people.
And making connections. It sounds like that's top
Yeah,
priority. Yeah.
definitely. And asking for connections.
How do you do that?
I usually introduce myself. I have a card, like a greeting card with my art on the front. And on the back, I have a picture of it hanging like in a space, like in a hotel lobby or something. So they get the idea. And I usually do a handwritten note. Sometimes I send those out cold, or I email people. I find out who the hospitality person is at a vineyard or winery, and I just ask. Or if I'm there, I ask to speak to somebody, tell them I'm an artist, and they can always visit my website. But when you're 69, I'm like, it's easier to ask now. I don't have much time left. I'm like, just go for it.
So mostly through real mail or in person, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then what are your main avenues of marketing? Shows give you exposure. They put your work in front of people, but let's talk about email and social media. How are you using those?
I have a small email list, like 102 people, although maybe 20% of those are actual buyers, which is nice. So I am not nearly as frequent with email as I would like to be. That's what, but I occasionally do, especially if I have new work or a new show. I've tried doing educational newsletters. Like one of the newsletters I did was, how do you paint clear? Because I do a lot of glasses or white wine. And people are fascinated with that in person when I have an actual piece of paper there. But I don't know. I don't get a big response to that. People respond to my email newsletter when I tell them about a new work or a new show.
Yeah.
So I'm learning. Social media, I would say I have a love-hate relationship, but I don't really love it. So I do it when I can. I don't put pressure on myself anymore. There's so many spinning plates sometimes. So if I do a show and I snap a few pictures, I put it up. I don't know who it's going to. The same people like and comment. And so I guess you could say I'm a little disillusioned with social media, but do I give it 100%? No.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you and everyone else is disillusioned with social media. So just stand in line. Well, so it sounds like your main avenues of marketing are making connections with people and following up and following through and finding more people and more people.
I do.
Yeah.
Cold emails I do send. And I did try, there is a publication here called Oregon Wine Press. And I actually did 3 months of advertising with them featuring my Women in Wine series. And I got zero from it. It wasn't super expensive. It was like $250 for a small ad each of 3 times. I actually looked on my website and hardly got a bump and people say, what, you have to do it 7 times or I don't know, probably a full year before people. But my attention span being what it is, I thought, oh, let me move on. I'm getting better response from just meeting people.
Yeah.
So I might try that again. The other thing about print media is it sticks around.
Exactly.
I mean, right? Those publications, I see them in tasting rooms, or I don't know where I've been. I see them a
Doctor's
lot.
offices.
Yeah, exactly. And they're there for 2 years or whatever. So you never know when you may get. So I
Right.
may try that.
What advice do you have for artists who want to move or who are moving to a new location and starting over?
Well, I will say that place does matter. And maybe other people know that. It took me moving to realize how much it affects your mood, your energy, even your sense of abundance or scarcity. I think that's the biggest thing that I realized. It made it easier for me to think of myself as a painter,
Mhm.
as an artist. And maybe that goes back to what you were saying, where you can reinvent yourself easier. It's not cheap to move. Yeah, and so it's a big decision.
Yeah.
But I actually moved within Dallas more than anyone I know. I lived in one of every neighborhood there. So the actual physical act of moving was not very daunting to me. And the other thing I would say is as soon as you can, find a community to join. For me, it was the Maud Kearns Art Center. And if the first place you try isn't working, I visited a lot of different art centers here, and one that's south of me. And I tried to get a vibe. What are the people like? Where do I fit in here? And if you're a talker like I am, yeah, just talk to everybody and let them know you're an artist. And people are always so willing to hook you up with other artists
Yeah.
or meet other people that they think might help you or whatever. So, yeah, joining the community was probably one of the best things I did.
It sounds like you started that before you even moved there by submitting to that show. So, yeah,
Yeah,
you knew that.
without really realizing
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Final question. What are you looking forward to in the upcoming months?
Well, I'm really looking forward to the show that I'm going to be hanging at the end of this month,
So, at the
at
end
the
of August.
August.
Mhm.
I am really excited about the large paintings for my Women in Wine. I'm finding I love watching people's reaction to this kind of joyful, fun, playful imagery.
Yeah.
And old, young, that kind of runs across the board on who's attracted to it.
Yeah.
The piece that I did called Cannonball that sold at the show, a woman walked in and everyone would laugh when they'd look at it. And she walked in and she talked about it with her husband. She was, I don't know, maybe mid 40s. And she walked away. I said, I also have the prints available just to let them know. They weren't at the show actually. But she walked away and was looking at other booths, and she came back and she said, "I want it." And I was like, I didn't know what she was talking about. And she looked at the painting and she said, "I want it." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even sell that." I mean, she bought it without me
It
selling
sold
it. So
itself.
it sold itself.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to developing that line.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
That's wonderful. It sounds like you've found your joy. And you have just given like free advertising to the town of Eugene. I don't know if they're going to be ready for all the artists willing to come their way. Thank you so much, Joan.
Thank you, Alyson. What fun to talk with you. I will say, if anyone ever has a chance to take a in-person workshop from you, it's well worth it. I think, yeah, your energy it's great.
Thank you. They're fun. I miss them a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Good talking with you.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Art Biz. And hey, if you would rather listen than watch, you can always get The Art Biz wherever you find your podcasts. Check out the description below for things that have been mentioned and any links. And I hope to see you on another episode.